In 2002, due to unprecedentedly high ratings from a certain special, Nickelodeon produced a spin-off series to Rugrats that ended up getting unfortunate backlash. One that was supposed to appeal to a new batch of viewers. This was none other than All Grown Up. It ran for 55 episodes before being quietly canceled in 2005. The show was really trying to be ambitious for aging up their babies by a decade and sending them off to their new adventurous lives, but their target demographic gave it 2 thumbs down. Perhaps this was because this concept had been done by being run into the ground by other networks at the time, or that this simply wasn't appropriate to do for a cartoon like this. Well, why was this? I, in fact, have 4 reasons as to why. Number 4, the early character designs. When the show started in 2002, the characters and the environments had to be given a drastic change in appearance. The clothes in the special made them look just like they would be a decade or older, but when it came to the official series, the colors on the clothes and the general animation looked oddly flat. So it was probably less than appealing to those viewers. They commonly wore the same clothes in every episode, which is ubiquitous for cartoons, but just resigned badly with the environment of the show. Season 2, however, was given an animation bump with more vibrant clothes and designs for the kids, with more changes of the clothes in each episode to make the story feel more engaged with the change. But a good chunk of the fan base had left by that point due to either disinterest or negative response to the premise. This may be linked to reason number 3, poor advertising. For those who watch these Nick videos, you probably already know why this probably is, but I'll explain anyway. The show really was not promoted as heavily as SpongeBob or Fairly OddParents, so it was sadly overshadowed by those shows for not being in the ideal ratings, which occurred around the midpoint of season 2. Most of the ads that did appear were exaggerated and not quite as appealing as the other shows. It was as if the advertiser had so little faith in the show as ads became increasingly rare to the point where episodes ended up being shelved. In fact, they didn't even finish airing the 4th season properly before unceremoniously broadcasting it at 6:30 a.m. in November 2007, over 2 years after these episodes completed production. It did end up rerunning until the start of 2013, but that was still at the crack of dawn, so the damage was clearly done. Reason number 2, plot-derived stories. Many of these stories had been done by sitcoms, let alone teen shows, to hell and back. The most particularly interesting is All Grown Up's sister show, As Told by Ginger, which was more directly aimed at teenagers and as it was mainly an all-teenage cast. The show had more dark, realistic, and practical storylines for its viewers, and despite the crude looks of the characters, they took care of their struggles properly. All Grown Up, meanwhile, felt like it was grabbing the stuff while literally directly replacing it with their own characters while barely changing the dialogue and scenarios with quirky comedy and bait and switches. It was like they wanted All Grown Up to casually subvert Ginger's show, but they knew they had to give it some distinction. Sadly, the reason that all this happened leads us to the number 1 reason that All Grown Up was turned down by audiences. And that is, the characters don't act like their age nor like their old selves. These characters in the original show were 1 to 3 years old, meaning that when All Grown Up comes around, they would be about a decade older. Thus, they would be dealing with things that 11 to 13-year-olds should be facing. Although Klasky Chupo really wanted to expand upon world building for these new variations of their characters, so instead of just dealing with school and family, they end up touching on more teenage-oriented scenarios like romance, physical changes, and even addiction, although not the addiction that you're thinking of. All this stuff was more suitably tackled in As Told by Ginger. I'm not saying that they had to avoid these topics, but they should not have carried them so early into the show's run. It also doesn't help that the character designs make them seem older than they actually are, with the probable exceptions of Susie and Dill. So some casual viewers incorrectly presume that everyone was indeed at least 13 years of age. This was kind of common for other preteen shows at the time, but All Grown Up's case was probably the most egregious. Amidst it all, most of the characters' dialogues drive too far away from their real personalities and too far into generic teenagers. They do occasionally reference the old show's lore, but they subvert this by staying cliched situational dialogue of those shows from the late 90s and perhaps even the early 90s. They could feel like older, disassociated versions of themselves that cannot find their own former charisma, so it was a lot harder for some people to relate to them, which really was unfortunate. Now, All Grown Up has gained a little cult following thanks to YouTube clips and Paramount Plus, as well as the somewhat infamous Rugrats reboot of 2021. And they are starting to see how All Grown Up actually has had some sense of success. Fans like myself feel that it gave some characters more dynamics and story arcs, especially Dill. We wanted to see the new world that they'd be living in. They had some good lore from the OG Rugrats, Reptar, for example. The animation had good stylization as well, especially midway through the show's run with the shading, as well as how all the clothes tried to be different every episode. They even therefore tried to give these characters new journeys and especially resolutions. In fact, there was one episode that was almost the finale, RV Having Fun Yet, wherein they go on a road trip for Susie's Macy's Day Parade, but they end up being overdosed by their mothers, and then they try to abandon them only for them to lose the RV, but manage to independently go so far without them and realize how much their moms ultimately helped them. I say almost finale because this was the last episode to be aired at a consistent practical time slot before being axed. And thus it's certainly possible that fans believed it was indeed the final episode of the show. However, we got one final season after that, which sucked. It obliterated the faith that season 3 and 4 were giving us with the character growth, relatability, and even creativity. Instead, traded it for filler episodes and episodes that contradict the characters' motives, dare I say, flanderizing them. Tommy got it the worst for being uncharacteristically impulsive and even insensitive, which is very cruelly ironic considering how much he helped them in the original show. So instead of a reboot for All Grown Up, much less a sixth season, I believe people like myself want a significantly improved fifth season to have helped the show try to stay above water. Nevertheless, people are seeing how great of a cartoon that All Grown Up tried to be in its earlier episodes and are preferring it to the chaos that is the Rugrats reboot because it mostly contradicts what made the original Rugrats special, 2020 setting aside, even more so than All Grown Up accidentally did. All Grown Up has merits, so despite the flaws, I would like you to watch it because you'll find some good charm that you would not expect from a lowbrow 2000s tune.